Hi guys and welcome to episode 25 of the work.knits podcast. My name's Lauren, I'm coming to you from England in the United Kingdom, and this is a podcast where I talk all about my knitting projects. Sometimes there's a little bit of crochet thrown in, sometimes there's some sewing, and for returning viewers you'll know this podcast has been going for approximately 9 months-ish. And for newer viewers, thank you so much for checking out this channel. I know there are so many podcasters out there now and we all bring something different to the table, but I'm just very, very grateful that you're spending some time with me. Now, today's episode, I've been so excited to film. In fact, I almost filmed it yesterday. For those who don't know, I tend to record my podcast episodes on the day that they go out. And that just, for me, really maximises the content I have to bring to you all. But I was so excited to film this, I almost did it yesterday, but I've held off, and I think that's the right thing to do because it's let certain things dry, it's let me bring together everything all in one go rather than kind of filming things in bits. So anyway, here we are. So I was going to start the episode off with a sip of my coffee and also to share with you a little snack I've got with me. So I have got some Chococo chai milk chocolate, and my excuse is that I'm test running this to see if it'd be a good stocking filler, but let's be honest, I just really fancy some chocolate, and this, I'm really hoping this has got the right balance of the chai spice and that it's not like really sweet. But the company, they make their chocolate in Dorset in the UK. Everything's direct trade, so they try and skip out middlemen to give the fairest price to those that they're working with, in terms of the kind of trade partners in Colombia, and I think it's all recyclable. So far tick, but let's try some and see what I think in terms of the flavour profile. That is so good. So good. They've really let the sweetness of the chocolate sweeten the whole thing rather than adding extra sugar in the flavouring, and the spices come through beautifully. I need to include some of this, I think, in a giveaway prize next time. It's that good. So I hope you guys have got a coffee and something to eat. I think this is going to be a relatively long episode. Got lots to share with you. So definitely something that you maybe you just want to immerse yourself and sit for an hour or so. Maybe you want to do this in several parts. Either way, all good. But as I said at the beginning, so excited to bring this podcast episode to you. Lots to talk about. Before I get stuck in, a quick thank you to new viewers. I know that there are now so many podcasters out there. Finding us is really hard, but also, you only have so many hours in the day and we all have something different to bring. But I'm just very grateful that you are choosing to spend some time with me, and yeah, I really wanted to thank you for that. For my long-standing viewers, also a huge thank you, because it's quite surreal getting to episode 25 and to also see my confidence growing in kind of producing these episodes, and I really wouldn't have that confidence or keep coming back if it wasn't for all your ongoing support, so I'm just really grateful. Thank you. Okay, and then I also just very quickly wanted to give a quick apology. So if you were amongst the first 80 people to see my last episode, then you will have seen version 1. And if you have come back for this episode, then thank you so much, because you will have witnessed me very inelegantly, if that's a word, dealing with my cold symptoms. I became aware that I hadn't edited this out, and yeah, was absolutely mortified, but created a version 2, which I think is what the majority have seen. But if you were one of the people that saw the original, and if you're one of the people that I messaged in absolute mortification and you reassured me, then thank you so much. I guess it's proof that we are all only human, and yeah, we're doing our best. But I wanted to apologise, these things happen, but yeah. So, on to more positive things, finished objects, and for those who've been following along for a while, you'll know that what I am wearing has been the most mammoth project. My goodness. This has been on the needles for most of 2023, and the reason it's been on the needles for so long is I have absolutely loved the creative process behind this, and I've loved watching it grow, and I would have knit it just solidly. However, the gauge I've chosen to knit this at and the type of yarn has been so tough on my hands, and so I've had to kind of take breaks just to keep my hands good, I guess. So let's dive into some detail. There's gonna be quite a lot in this first section on this jumper because there is a lot going on with it and I want to give it its full glory. So let me just stand up first to show you. So it's got a little split hem. It's got a little pearled faux seam going all the way up. There we go. Okay, I think you've got a good view. Oh, cuffs. There we go. So, for background, this jumper, I have not knit it with a pattern. I have not done any maths. I just cast on and I doodled it, which is why it's become known as my doodle sweater, or my Tresko sweater, which refers to the line of yarn from Sandnes Garn that I've used for the grey, the main colour. So, where to begin with this? So I guess first stop being, why did I doodle it? Well, at the time when I cast this on, this must have been back in like February or March time, I just really wanted to enjoy the process of knitting a jumper. I didn't want to follow a pattern because then I get this, like, at the time I was getting this feeling like I was constantly modifying patterns, which I found very tiring because I didn't then know if they're going to work out okay. I also was finding that colourwork yokes were really a challenge for me in the sense that they kept being too short, depth-wise. And then I guess I also just wanted the, like, freedom to keep knitting without being overly technical about it. And I think the irony here is that in order to do that, it was also quite a good test of my technical expertise in knitting to be able to just go for it and to know how to fix things and go back and forwards. And so a little bit of an irony there, but we're calling this my doodle sweater. Now, something I'd say right up top is that this sweater is also hugely cost effective. This is probably one of my most cost effective knits. So the main colour, which is Sandnes Garn Tresko in like a granite colour. Now this, sorry, fluff up my nose. This Tresko is a 80% Norwegian wool, 20% polyester yarn. Now when I picked this up, I was in Copenhagen, in Sommerfuglen yarn shop, and they had this on sale in a basket and it was the equivalent of £2 per ball, and I just thought I can't pass that up. So I bought like something like 8 balls of this. And when I picked it up I thought, wow, it's a really like natural rustic yarn. I would never have guessed it had any polyester in it, but I really don't mind that. I think it's going to make it more sturdy, but it feels like a very rustic yarn. There is, I would say if you're someone who's very sensitive to wool, it's got a prickle factor for sure, but what I really wanted to knit was a, like, the Norwegian word for sweater, please correct me if I'm wrong, I think is genser. And to me that really, like, in my head that really makes me think of like a really kind of thick, almost like jacket-like item. I know that's not what it means, but that's just what it conjures up in my head, and that's really what I wanted. I wanted something quite dense, I wanted something that I'd throw over other layers. So anyway, I bought these 8 balls, which is the equivalent of about £16, British pounds, and then what I've done is I've then used a contrast colour, which is Rico Designs Luxury Alpaca Sock yarn, and I've used a ball and a tiny bit, like, and such a small extra bit. I mean, we're talking like maybe a metre of a second ball, so let's call it 1 ball, and that was £16 for that 1 ball, but it goes quite far and I held it double. So in total, this jumper has cost me £32, which I think for the kind of quality of the wool, the size of the jumper, the kind of weight of it, right? I just think that's, for me, a very cost-effective process, particularly as this is now one of my favourite jumpers. So I wanted to share that. If we go from the top on construction, because I think some of these construction techniques may be really helpful for all of you, I cast on below the rib. I can't remember exactly how I did the increase for the yoke, but I think basically between every break I did some increases, maybe like every 5 stitches, I want to say, and that gave it a really nice slope over my shoulder. As I said, I held the contrast colour double, and I knit this all on 3.5mm needles, and this Tresko is like probably somewhere between a DK and a worsted. It's quite thick. So I did these increases, then from here to here, you can kind of slightly see, I did some raglan, or at least just a couple of raglan in here. Then I knit the front and the back straight, which I know is maybe not the most normal construction after a round yoke, but I knit them straight, flat. And then I joined them under the arm and put in a couple of, I think 3 or 4 stitches, so 2 purl stitches and a knit stitch to create a faux seam that then also runs up the sleeve. When I joined, when I split for the front and the back at the kind of yoke part, I put not many but slightly more stitches to the front. So I think about 10 to 12 stitches to the front. Now my reason for doing this, and I don't know if other people get this, but lots of my sweaters have excess fabric in the centre of my back, and it's because lots of them split the stitches equally between the front and the back. But for many women, you have more volume in your body on the front. So my hope in doing this was that it would look even when you look at me, but that would be accommodating my chest. So as you can see on the back, it sits, I think, pretty beautifully flat rather than having excess fabric coming away from your body. So that's just something I would note, because when it came down to knitting the hem, the kind of big border at the hem, which I'll show you in a minute, when knitting it, you could really see the difference, that they're different widths. But I think on my body, they look quite even. So there we go. So that's a nice little construction detail, and I think if you are struggling with fit of jumpers, that's something I'd really recommend modifying on other patterns that you knit. It won't actually affect your sleeve stitch count because you're still operating with the same number of stitches overall. And the other thing I would say is actually with our arms too, most of us, if you look at how a sleeve falls and how your arm looks when it's straight down next to you, you want more of the volume pointing forwards anyway. So anyway, it won't affect your sleeve stitch counts, and I just thought that worked really well. I'll keep doing that. And as I say, it comes at the sleeve separation point, so I guess the only patterns that'd be hard to modify this with would be a pattern where your yoke design continues past the sleeve split. And then other details that I thought you guys might like. So continued the faux seams down the sides, that worked well. And then the borders and the cuffs, they've got like quite a interesting texture, and it's because where I held two strands of the contrast together, if you have that contrast being the purl stitch with the 2 strands, it kind of like fills in what would normally be the gaps in between purl stitches. So it then just kind of looks like you've made almost like a welt going vertically. I love it. I think it's great. And then I did another detail that I do on a lot of my jumpers is to, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this. I always, at the end of a rib now, I just knit around and then I cast off. And what that does is it really kind of lets the cast off sit slightly separate from the rib and makes it look really, really clean. Whereas sometimes I find if I cast off at the end of a rib, unless you do something like, what's what I'm looking for? You'll be screaming at the screen. You know what I mean when you sew the cast off edge so that it looks like the rib continues over the cuff. I really can't think of the name for it. But yeah, unless you're going to do a really fancy cast off, I find the cast off edge gets lost. So I really like this detail. And what else would I like to tell you about this? I slipped my last stitch each row on the edge of the split hem. I cast off 3 stitches at the side. That's quite a good technique actually. I cast off 3 stitches in the split, because if you literally split off between 2 stitches, you're going to get pulling, which will create like a laddering effect. So by casting off a couple of stitches, you're adding strength to that split. So that worked really well. And then, yeah, I think I did decreases maybe every like 10 stitches down the inside one each side of that faux seam. And there was another detail. Well, I don't know how well you can see, but I picked up the neckband afterwards, knit 1x1 rib in the Tresko, and then I've picked up, and then I cast that off, and I've picked up just inside that and knit with a single strand of the Rico Designs Alpaca sock. I've knit up in stockinette, and then I've folded that down and whip stitched it on the inside, and that just really means I don't get the prickle factor right next to my neck. I think that's it on the Tresko. I've spoken about yarn, needle sizes, I've spoken about cuff technique, yoke construction. Sorry, just mentally going through the list. I think that's everything that I've covered. But of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them down below in the comments. I'd love to answer any questions that you have. Oh, I guess the only other one that people might ask me is, did I go down a needle size for the main body compared to the colourwork? I didn't, because the gauge was so dense that I didn't feel I'd get that rippling, and it looks like I was just about okay. But yeah, other than that, I think this genuinely might be my new favourite sweater that I've ever knit. So yeah, I just highly recommend doing this, and I think even if it, like this, I think I was quite, and genuinely this was not skill, part of this was luck that this just worked out. I didn't note down how many stitches I cast on, I just literally just went for it, and I think I cast on way more than I thought I'd need, because I knew then I could bring the neckline in afterwards if I needed to. But I think as long as you're prepared to frog back a bit at times, as long as you're prepared to try it on all the time, and I think what it does really teach you is more about your body, and I think it gets us out of the mindset of just following what someone else has told us will look good, and actually thinking about how our body works and how garments work on our body. And I think that's a really like empowering self-love process, so would highly recommend. Right, I'm going to take a sip of coffee and I'm going to check my notes, because yes, I have notes for this episode because I knew there was going to be so much to cover and I didn't want to forget anything. Okay, I've had a good sip of coffee and I think we're going to move to whips in a kind of semi-normal structure here. Okay, I'm cheating ever so slightly, but I think allow it. It's that time of year where we start to have goodwill. So I'm going to class this as a half finished object because the bit I've got left to do on it is so small, and I just absolutely loved this project. So I'm going to dip down to get it. There's going to be a lot of dipping down because stuff's down next to me. So, okay, here we go, guys. Da-da-da. Oh, that texture. Okay, these are the dots, gloves and mittens. And this is really bad. I don't have the designer's name on me. 1 second. Okay. These are the dots, gloves and mittens by Ayano Tanaka, also known on Instagram as Ichiboku, I think that's how you pronounce it. I've tagged the designer in my posts about this on Instagram, but I decided, so if a family member of mine is watching, please jump forwards away. I decided that I really wanted to knit my dad some mittens. My dad does a lot of singing as part of like a small choir, and they in the winter sing outside a lot. They do some like kind of busking and raise money for charity, and they're stood around a lot right in the cold, and so I really wanted to make my dad a pair of mittens. Now I kind of was looking at kind of mitten patterns. I had a look at some of the Pearl Soho. Yes, Pearl Soho. Why is everything feeling so weird? Like I feel like I'm saying things wrong or getting names wrong. Anyway, I was having a look at lots of different mitten patterns, and there were some really beautiful, really simple ones, but I wanted something with a little bit of texture. And anyway, I came across this design. Now the pattern is written for just women's small and women's medium size, but it's a very versatile pattern, you know, mittens and gloves, and all is included in one document. So I figured I would just cast on with a bigger needle size and hope that that worked well. And I think it has. So the pattern calls for like a 2.75 and 3mm needle, and I've used a 3.5mm needle. The texture and the kind of fabric I think is pretty good. I just need to add the thumb, which is why this is a bit of a cheeky me saying it's an FO. But it just needs a thumb. And I needed to nick the needles for some sleeve knitting. So anyway, I'm going to block this so that the end is not so angular, so it's more rounded, which I think will look lovely. And in terms of yarn, so the main colour is one of my all-time favourite yarns. This is my first time using it, but I knew from the minute the ball arrived in the post, and then from feeling it and then beginning to knit with it. Oh, I love it. This is Wool Dreamers Saona, which is a wool cotton blend. And this is the colourway Ozetta. Beautiful. And then I've contrasted it. The mustard colour is Studio Donegal Tweed in a fingering weight in like the mustard colour, but it's got tiny, tiny, tiny flecks of like red and a stone colour and then like a slightly green colour. I think it's beautiful. Other ways I've like edited this, so I did the cuff as prescribed. I did the gusset increases as prescribed. I knit this section pretty much as prescribed. I think I did maybe an extra centimetre or two before decreases, and then I've left more. I bound off more stitches than the pattern called for. The pattern called for you to continue to decrease, but I just thought it was going to make my mitten too pointy, so I edited that ever so slightly. And then the pattern does something really beautiful, I think, which is that you've got this kind of raised pearl texture on the cuff and on the back, but on the inside of the hand it's just flat to help with kind of picking stuff up, basically. So half finished object, absolutely love it. Really, really excited to finish the thumb on this one and then cast on the second one. And it was a really, really quick knit. I think I did this one in just like a couple of evenings. It was really addictive. There's lots of rest rows between the texture and you're only purling some stitches on one row out of 4. So I think that works beautifully. So yeah, really, really gorgeous design. I'd really highly recommend. And I think, and I don't want to get this wrong, but I think the designer hasn't got masses of designs. They've really put a lot of consideration and thought into a smaller collection, but what they have published I think is really lovely, so I'd highly recommend going to check them out. So that's my half finished object. I'm gonna have another sip of coffee because it's gonna get cold. And right, God, I feel really all over the place today, which is annoying because I was so excited to come and talk. Right, for my next work in progress, where should we go? Okay, I'm going to go to what I thought was going to be a finished object this week, and I was really pushing myself on it, and I think I need to just take a moment and realise I did do a lot of work on it, and I shouldn't be annoyed at myself that I haven't finished it. Because this podcast is not about pressure, it's about sharing the joy of knitting. I need to remind myself. So, I was really hoping that this episode would mark the completion of some really long-term whips and really get those off my needles, start enjoying them, and we're nearly there. So I need to, as I say, be less harsh on myself. I've got a big one out the way with this. The other one that I've been working on non-stop is this, which looks horrendous all bunched up on my needles. But this is my so-called Grink wrap. This is another like little experiment cast on maybe like early summer this year. This is my first go at intarsia, and I have basically, if you ignore the dark border, I've basically held one strand of Knoll Yarns Superfine lambswool in the colourway Almond, and then I have just changed the colour of the mohair I hold with it. So believe it or not, there is a consistent same coloured strand held across all these different blocks. So this lighter mohair is Isager Mohair in the colourway Ecru. Then this gorgeous pink colour is Gullrock Fibres Rose Gold. And then the dark pink is a little ball of Schulana Kid Silk Mohair in the colourway 210. Now this, I don't know if you can see, this little progress marker here, that is where I was at the start of this week just been. and I knit all of this down to here, and then I've knit the whole board, well, almost 3 sides of the border. So there has been a lot of knitting on this week. But yeah, I really love how it's coming out. This is exactly what I'd pictured. I'm doing a 24 row border knit flat in stockinette. So I've done both the ends, and then I think I'm on row like 12 or something on this edge. So I just need to knit double that. Then I need to pick up along the other edge, knit 24 rows, and then I will do a big I-cord edging on the whole thing. So that will take a little while, which is why I just was like, don't push yourself so much and stay up late last night. The border is also knit in Knoll Yarns Superfine lambswool, this time in the colourway Oxford, which is this beautiful like dark bluey grey colour. So yeah, so we're really close, guys, and this is exactly how I pictured it. I'm absolutely loving it. I've got a little bit of the Schulana and the rose gold colourway from Gullrock Fibres left over. That Gullrock Fibres Mohair has to be one of my favourites, and I think also just kind of like I guess like a nice aside is I purchased that at Wonderwool Wales. First time I'd come across them. They're a natural dyeing company, and they double dye quite a lot of their mohair so that the silk core is a different colour to the fluff. So in the rose gold, the silk core is this gorgeous gold colour, and then the fluff is the rose colour. And you get these in quite big skeins. I think they're 50-gram skeins of mohair, which means they go and go and go and go and go and go. So if you are thinking of doing a sweater in mohair, I'd highly recommend checking them out. I can't remember the exact price per skein, but I, as a rule, don't tend to spend more than about £20, British pounds per skein. I vary that rule sometimes, but as a rule I don't tend to, and I don't think this was more than that. Could be wrong. But even if it is more than that, if your average ball of mohair, 25-gram ball of mohair, is around 10 British pounds, then still pretty cost effective, and you're supporting a small business, and it's naturally dyed. Anyway, just thought I'd put that out there because I've still got all of that left over. So I think I could have made quite a big chunk of a sweater with just one skein, which I think is pretty good. Anyway, final thing to mention, this was knit on 3.25mm needles. I have had lots of projects on the go on quite small needles. I've always been a 3.5mm kind of gal, but 3.25 for an entire wrap does feel quite tiny and slow, and particularly as I'm using like weaving weight as the main yarn, and obviously lace weight in the mohair. So it's been a slow project, but really proud of it, and it's really, really coming together. Okay, so that's a wrap. I thought I was going to potentially have like 3 wraps almost finished to show you. I'm obviously on a bit of a scarf / wrap kick because, as you will see, here we go. So last episode I showed you that I'd cast on a wrap from the 52 Weeks of Scarves by Liner Magazine, or Liner Publishing because it's a book, and I'd cast on, I think it's pronounced Mooi, M-O-O-I, the Mooi scarf or wrap by, I think she's called Erica, no, completely off, Ninna Tanskanen, which, without showing you instructions, looks like this. It's gorgeous. I was explaining that I have omitted I've basically ignored some of the instructions that create the ribbing and the columns effect, and I'm just knitting it in plain garter. That calls for 3.25mm needles, and I was like, there is no way I'm doing another huge wrap on 3.25mm needles, so I've cast on 3.75, and this won't look massively different to when I last showed you, but I have put work into it. The long and the short is, this is quite slow going. I don't know whether it's because it took me a while to figure out the shape it was creating, and then that meant I was using a lot of brain power on that and it wasn't going as fast. I don't know, but it's just felt very slow. But I have worked on it, even though it doesn't look like it. So what you've got here is this main colour. Here is Holst Garn Supersoft 2-ply jumper weight yarn in the colourway Almond. This is leftovers from a sweater I knit for my dad. And then this next colour is Knitting for Olive Merino in the shade Autumn, which I just think is so perfect. And then I'm going to move into a slightly unusual colour for me. This is called Plum Rose. This is also a Knitting for Olive Merino. And I think that kind of orange and then like a plummy... My cat's just decided that she wants to get into a paper bag. Apologies for the crunkling. For me, that's quite an unusual combination, this kind of purpley, plummy rose with the orange, but I think it's going to be beautiful and so autumnal. So now that some of my longer needles are freeing up again, I'll take this back off waste yarn. I think it was easier to show you on waste yarn anyway, because you can kind of see the shape taking effect. And then I will hopefully have at least this first section, because it's kind of knit in sections, either this first section or maybe slightly more done for when I am back in December. More on that later. So that's my next whip, a little bit of progress on that. I am enjoying it. It's just, yeah, it's just slightly new for me, the construction, and I'm not used to knitting in garter stitch at the moment, so that just feels like it's taking a bit of time. Then this project, I have made a dent on it. It doesn't feel like I've made as much of a dent as I wanted to. I have made a dent on it. This is part of my gift knitting, so I actually really need to crack on with this because I need to gift it a bit before Christmas. But this is a This is a flea stitch double fabricked cowl that I'm working on. Actually, it's been quite good to take a break from this, because at one point, and I don't know if you guys get this when you gift knit, but you come up with this idea, you think, oh my gosh, that'd be perfect for that person. And then you get partway through and you're like, is it going to be good enough? Oh, I don't think it's perfect. Have I made the... Anyway, I get this real indecisiveness. So stepping away for a bit is good, because when you pick it back up, you're like, yes, no, that will be perfect. Anyway, I've probably knit, I've got a little stitch, little like progress keeper in there. I think I've knit about 3 inches on this in the last 2 weeks. Not masses, but enough. I'm almost halfway through it because I want it to be half with this light grey background and blue fleck, and then it's going to, I'm going to swap out the blue for this mustard yellow. I was at one point thinking, do I make this a double layered scarf? But I just don't think I've got enough of the main colour, and I don't think I've got enough patience, being quite honest. So in terms of yarn, this is the KFO podcast episode, because this is also a Knitting for Olive Merino. The light grey colour is called Pearl Grey, the blue is called Dusty Petroleum, and then the yellow is called Mustard, I believe. Yeah. And this is being knit on 3.5mm needles. So yeah, I'm just, no pattern for this. I'm just doing very basic flea stitch. I think I cast on like 120 or 140 stitches. And I will just keep knitting this as a tube. It won't be particularly long. It won't be like, you know, double loop, super long. It'll be actually quite contained. And then it's just a single loop that she can slot over her head, and then she can twist it so it's either showing both the yellow and the blue, or if it goes better with her outfit, just the yellow or just the blue. So yeah, there we go. That's my next whip. And then another whip that you're probably all expecting to see some progress on, and there is some progress, is my Nord sweater by Sandnes Garn. So this, again, I was kind of going all guns blazing. There's a bit of a theme here, guys. Like, there's lots of projects that could have been finished, but I just... Oh dear, 1 second. What have I done to that? We're just doing some knitting surgery. Give me 1 moment. Right, that's better. Okay, we're on tiny circumference sleeve needles, and stitches are flying around, but not in the normal way. If they just slid off, that would have been fine. Right, this, as usual, is inside out. Again, if you're a new viewer, you may not know this, and for those who've been watching along for a while, you're going to be bored of me saying this. I knit my stuff inside out. Never thought this was weird. It's just what feels more comfortable on my hands. But I'm learning it is unusual. But yes, so when I knit stuff in the round, my needles are the far side of the loop, and the rest of the knitting is hanging between my body and my hands. And for me, that puts less pressure on my wrists, whereas when I have the needles closest to me and then my knitting looping away from me, I feel like I'm knitting quite upright and my wrists are kind of having to do this a lot more. I don't know if it's psychological, I don't know what it is, but anyway, I don't like it. So this always makes these quite hard to show. So the sleeve's going to be inside out, but some of you may have already seen this already. This, as I say, Nord sweater by Sandnes Garn. It's a free pattern on their website. It's got quite a shallow colourwork yoke, in the sense that the colourwork just kind of, you work in the round yoke construction for quite a short amount of colourwork, and then you do some raglan increases. I've done something that I think is quite pretty with my raglans. I think I've shared some details on the episode before, but I'm not going to, because I think I might use it in design, and I might kind of, you know, look, I'm sure someone else has done it before, but I might just keep that a little bit like a secret sauce, a little bit under wraps. And then I'm knitting, I'm quite away down one sleeve, trying to gently pull this around the right way without dropping yet more stitches. That would be nice. Yep, success. Not success. Oh, Lauren. Right, I'll fix those stitches later. I need to put needle stoppers on this and then they won't come off. So I've knit a decent way down one sleeve. I knit straight for about 3 inches, then I decreased 2 stitches either side of this centre line every 5. I know this looks a bit weird and pointy here, but on the arm it looks good. And then I'm now at a width that I like around my arm, having tried it on, so I'm now going to knit straight. And then I'm going to do a very, very deep cuff. The one thing that has been putting me off with this, it's one of those things, like the main body of the sweater was totally a process knit. I loved doing it. The one thing I hate doing is ribbing, I'm going to be honest, but I really love the look of ribbing. So I'm doing 1 by 1 twisted rib for a very deep hem. This is a split hem, and this is how far I am currently. I think I'm about 35 rows in, and I want to do a 50 row hem. And this is the hem is on 3mm needles, so it really is quite hard going. And I'm quite a tight knitter, so 3mm, you're looking at kind of the gauge that some other people do their socks at. Because as I say, I'm such a tight knitter. So anyway, so really deep hem. I then, as I say, need to finish the sleeve and then knit. I'm going to do a 50 row cuff, although that ribbing will be easier because at the moment I'm having to do a twisted purl stitch on the reverse side because I'm knitting flat, whereas obviously on the cuffs I'll be knitting in the round, so it'll always just be going through the back loop of the knit stitch. And then I obviously have the other front hem to do, knit the other sleeve, and then I also want to pick up and do a really deep, again 1 by 1 twisted rib, really deep turtleneck on this. So it will be beautiful once it's done. In terms of, I've obviously discussed needle size for the hems. The main body's knit on 3.5mm needles, and the yarn, the main colour, the grey, is Filcolana Panilla, which is their Peruvian wool, in the shade like light grey, and this is another desert island yarn of mine. Like, I just love this so much. And then the yoke colourwork is knit in scraps of or like little bits of the white is Retrosaria Apresenta Suri Alpaca. The blue is Cumulus, which is the Suri Alpaca by Fibre Spates, and then the kind of autumnal browny colour is Knitting for Olive. I don't know what colour it is, but it's like a dark ochre, gingerbready colour. They're Kid Silk Mohair, and then there's at the very top there's just a small bit of red, which is a sock mini from Lichen and Lace in the colourway Beetroot. So yeah, lots of progress, particularly on this rib, but just not as much progress as I'd wanted, but it's just because I've hit the point in the sweater that is like my least favourite. I have tried the sweater on as well this week. It's going to be quite a close fitting sweater, which I think is quite nice. I've knit quite a few with quite an amount of positive ease, so it's nice to have some that are kind of slimmer fit. It's not negative ease, it's not no ease, but it's maybe 1 to 2 inches, so that will be great. So that's that project. I'd kind of wanted to get most of these whips done before I go away, but I'm not sure we're going to achieve that. Speaking of, alright, we're getting to the end of the whips, guys, but speaking of, and speaking of 52 weeks of scarves, I've cast on another pattern from in here, which is, this is where I'm getting the Erica from, Erin Jensen, and it's the Kostner. Now again, I'm going to try and show you this without flashing instructions. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? I've known about the technique that makes these kind of like slightly tartan looking items for a long time, but I've not actually done one. So I was super excited about this. This may also be a gift knit, but it is. I cast this on last night. I am modifying the pattern ever so slightly. Let me untwist that, there we go. So here is where I'm up to. So I've modified the pattern ever so slightly. Basically, I've taken out 2 repeats and therefore done it like narrower than the pattern calls for. The pattern creates a really beautiful, really wide scarf, but for the recipient, I just don't think that's quite the right thing. I will soon be introducing some contrast colours, so that's exciting. And what I am knitting this in, and this kind of tips over into acquisitions, but please excuse, is BC Garn Loch Lomond, which is 100% organic wool. This is a DK weight and it's colour 09. And what else can I tell you? It is 150 metres per 50 grams, so about 300 metres to 100 grams. And they recommend needle size 4 to 5mm. This pattern calls for 5mm, so that is what I'm doing. And this colour's like really coppery, but it's got kind of cream flecks in it. It's got dark grey. It's got some very gentle yellows. Yeah, beautiful. So I'm going to contrast this with, haha, here's one I had earlier. It's down here in my stash, which is perfect. I'm contrasting this with Merino Skewers Mendip DK. This is like the natural base, it's like cream, but it's got some grey flecks in it. And then I'm also going to contrast it with this, which is coal. So yeah, these are going to be my contrast colours, which I think will go really perfectly with the BC Garn. So yeah, very excited about that whip. So it's all the flat scarf and shawl knitting at the moment. So that's how many whips, let's just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whips that I've discussed, plus my finished object. Then there is one more. Now this one, guys, this is such an exciting thing for me. This is not a first. I've done one of these before, but how to like words. This is the most professional test knit I've done yet, and I was so excited to be selected for this. So Sharon, who is Contour Knit, based out of Ireland, gorgeous designs, like absolutely gorgeous. I've been following them for a while, really love the content they put out on Instagram, and they have released a test knit call for their Ecru sweater. I'm really hoping I'm pronouncing that correctly, but it's an Irish word. And it is a dropped shoulder design, knit top down, and I'm just loving it. So I was selected for the test knit within the last 2 weeks. We have approximately 10 weeks to test knit it, so I believe the pattern's coming out kind of early 2024. And yeah, I'm just loving it. So you're going to see Instagram progress on this, because I'd kind of wanted to make more progress ahead of this episode. But I have knit this much of the back. It's on a barber cord. You need to get those if you haven't already. They're just life changing. Yeah, so I've knit this much so far. Really, really gorgeous. So to explain the sweater a little bit more, actually I'll pull you up a picture. That's going to be the best option. Contour knit. So this is actually a great picture of the side. Don't know if it's going to focus. It's got a beautiful split hem detail where a cable down the side forms into the edge of that split hem, which I just think looks so polished and beautiful. And then this is a picture, I believe, of Sharon wearing the jumper, looking stunning. Whoop. Pulled up the comments by accident. But yeah, absolutely gorgeous. So far back panel only, but basically I need to knit this for however many rows and then put this back onto a barber cord, and then I will be picking up the shoulders on either side and knitting the front down to a certain point, joining the round, and then we'll be working the main body in the round. But I'm just absolutely loving it, and the only reason it's on the barber cord was I wanted to get a sense of how this is beginning to measure on me, and just take the opportunity to make sure I'm on gauge. I did do a gauge swatch. I'm using the recommended needle size, and I'm actually not going to go into the yarn too much. I am probably going to create a poll thing over on Insta, but I would love people to guess what yarn I'm using. Yeah, it's beautiful, loving it, but comment below, comment on my Insta story when I put it up, but have a guess what yarn I'm using. I think that'd be fun. So that test knit is super exciting. I have been applying for a couple of test knits actually. As some of you will know from my last episode, big life changes, and I've quit my corporate job. So I am making more time for me, I'm making more time for knitting and just investing in my passion. So test knits seem like quite a good way to go. So I've applied for a few more. Don't know if I'll get any of the others, but let's just see. But that one I've got is more than I expected, so loving that. I'm really enjoying it, and I think I'll try and create like a kind of separate vlog that goes through the process of the test knit in case anyone else has thought about test knitting, hasn't been sure, doesn't know what to expect. I thought it'd be really good fun to kind of vlog the process of that test knit. So checking my notes again, because really want to cover everything. I think that leads quite nicely onto future knitting plans. So I've got some acquisitions to share today, so we can discuss a bit of that then, but I think I've mentioned in previous episodes some things I really want to cast on. There's like a hot pink beanie that I want to knit. There's the rest of my gift knitting. I have got yarn in stash that I've wanted to use. You can see a bit of my stash behind me. But I also thought it'd be really fun to do a cowl. Now I've never run one before, so don't know how that will go. Like, I probably won't be the slickest operation you've ever seen, but I really thought it'd be cool to run a cowl. So one thing I thought we could do is we could jump on into Stephen West's Hyber Knit Along, or we could kind of run our own and we could pick a pattern that people have been wanting to knit for ages. Maybe it's a bit of a product knit and you're not sure if you'll enjoy the process. Maybe it's something that's like a huge process knit. I don't know, but if you've got any suggestions of something that you'd really like to knit as part of a knit along, please let me know below. Or alternatively, we don't have to do the same pattern, we could all do something around a theme. So given that you guys have all been so supportive of me in making the changes that I have in my life, you've been so supportive of this podcast, and a lot of the messaging from you all, which is just really gets me in a good way. A lot of the messaging is like, invest in what you love, take time for yourself, and I guess invest in yourself. That's the best way of putting it. So we're going to all be probably gift knitting, or we're going to be thinking about others a lot in the run up to Christmas, which is absolutely the way it should be, or whatever festive celebrations, or maybe it's just a period for getting family together, right? But we're going to be thinking about others an awful lot, which I think is great. But maybe in January we do a invest in yourself knit along, and you knit something that you've always wanted to knit, or you knit something that's just for you. I don't know. Let me know in the comments below what you think and what you'd like to do as a knit along, but I think that'd be really nice. I might even go so far as to set up like a Ravelry page. I can start activating the community tab here on YouTube so we can all be having like great discussions outside of video content, but would love to do that with you all, so let me know what you think. Okay, other future knitting, which I guess is not really knitting but it's knitting adjacent, and would also love your opinions on this. I am going to be moving back to the southwest of England, to our house there. For those who haven't seen in previous videos, we're temporarily living with family, which was to do with job moves and all sorts. Now that's not really applicable for me, so, and our house hasn't sold, so I'm going to move back there. And as part of that, we've currently got the house laid out in a way that's kind of with a view to selling it. But when I move back in, I'm going to take over a room as my knitting studio. So /craft room. So I am going to be kind of working out a way to, on a very small budget, make that room into like my dream craft room. So if any of you have got like craft room inspo that you've seen on Pinterest or on Instagram, please send it to me, because I am avidly trying to design the perfect knitting studio. So I would love to bring you guys along with me with that. I think in the new year I will be opening a second YouTube channel which will be vlogging renovations to our house and things like building my dream craft room. So yeah, we'd love to get some inspiration from you all. Alright, I'm looking down because again I'm reading my notes, but I think we are pretty much at the point where I can now, let's move on to a little vlog of yesterday. And for those viewers, what I had in my mind was that there are probably a lot of you viewing this who haven't visited the UK, and there are probably a lot of you that even if you have visited the UK, you may not have seen the city of Oxford. Very famous for its university, but also just a generally all-round beautiful city. Now, I didn't get as much footage of the city as a whole. It was absolutely heaving yesterday with people. So many people there. It was the Christmas lights turn on, so really busy. But my partner and I went for an afternoon and we just walked around the parks in the beautiful autumn colours. We went for coffee, we picked up a bagel from like a local shop, we went to 2 yarn shops, and I just thought I'd take you along with me. Now, I've never really vlogged before, so this is very much new territory for me, but I did, as I say, capture some footage, so I think let's hop to that now, and then I will show you, I'll go through kind of what I picked up yarn wise. Hi guys, so today you're joining us, we're going for a little walk in Oxford. We've just been into the covered market to go and look at the Woolhound, which is the yarn shop I've not visited before. And we've popped into the, I can't remember what they're calling it, it's like vintage clothing by the kilo, like worth its weight I think it's called. And now we're just popping through one of the Oxford University College parks, and we're just going to do a long loop round to the Oxford yarn store. So yeah, I'll try and capture bits and pieces as we go throughout the day, and yeah, hopefully include it all at the end of a podcast episode. Be really nice to show you guys around. But yeah, from here we are walking in the park with a coffee. So hope you guys are having a lovely weekend, and I'll chat to you soon. Okay, so I already showed you acquisitions in terms of the BT Garn Loch Lomond, so I won't go over that again. But whilst I was in Oxford, as you will have seen, we went to the Wool Hound, which is in the Oxford Covered Market, which is this beautiful, they're almost like miniature streets, all under a covered enclosure, and you've got everything from barber shops to cafes to ice cream shops to florists, shoemakers, sock shops, all sorts. It's a lovely atmosphere. It's got benches for people to sit and enjoy a cup of coffee and decide where they're going to go. Anyway, the Wool Hound is a gorgeous knitting shop in there. Now, what I quite like is that they have focused their stock on just a couple of brands, but then given you a really expansive number of yarns from that brand, if that makes any sense. So they've got a lot of Erica Knight, and they've got multiple Erica Knight yarns. Now, Erica Knight is a prolific designer in the UK, prolific yarn producer, but not one that I've maybe looked into too much. And they do lots of British breeds, which I think is lovely. Really want to support that. However, there are other British breed yarn producers who are smaller scale, and just a personal preference, I prefer to support them. Erica Knight is a very established, very large company, to the best of my knowledge. So yeah, would just prefer to support maybe other British yarn producers. But what they did have at the Wool Hound is a lot of European brands that are maybe slightly harder to get our hands on here in the UK. And one in particular that just caught my eye, I'm evidently in a kind of fluffy vibe at the moment, is this incredible, it's blowing out on the camera. It is quite bright, but it's got like a cinnamony rosiness to it that's not showing up on camera. This is Adriafil, which I think is an Italian brand. Cubicle is the yarn base, and this is colour colour 86. Yeah, I think so. Now this yarn is 40% acrylic, 36% alpaca, 14% wool, and 10% polyamide. I thought that's news to me. I thought acrylic and polyamide were pretty much the same thing. But anyway, so it's got multiple different bases in it. Now I know some people don't like plastic or acrylic yarns, but more and more I'm looking at kind of which jumpers, which things that I've knit have really held up well, and the ones with some acrylic in it or polyamide really do hold up the best. So I'm not saying that I will stop knitting with pure wools or pure alpaca or whatever, but I just think we need to stop giving it quite such a hard rep, because yes, there is some things that are bad for the environment in the production of the yarn, but if the garment then lasts for longer, you're producing less waste and you're getting more longevity. So a way up to be had, everybody. But yes, I bought 3 balls of this. Again, trying to be very transparent on prices and things. This was £6.50 a ball. So I got 3 balls. It's not showing up correctly on camera. It's got a lot more pink to it, and it's not, yeah, it's looking quite, I don't really know how to, no, it's just not showing right. Oh well. It's really gorgeous, but I think I might knit another of the Kostner tartan scarves, but in this. And I'm going to keep 1 ball out, because when we then went to the Oxford yarn store, which is got more independent yarn brands, less kind of big companies. Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean by more independent. Words. You know what I mean, guys. I hope you know what I mean anyway. I picked up a number of things there. So that shop is just so lovely. It really is like a, how do I put it? It's a knitting shop made for knitters, which I know seems really obvious, but some knitting shops kind of, you could take the wool out and put another product in very easily. They're kind of exchangeable. The Oxford yarn shop, like every element of it has been designed with wool in mind, like the way they present all the yarn, the flow of the shop. It's just yarny goodness. They've got the most incredible wool of Jameson's 2-ply jump weight yarn. I was talking to them about how they made that display. Like, it's just incredible. They've got like a whole counter full of mohair, like just, oh, and they know so much about each of the brands. Like they know about the kind of process behind how some of the brands develop their different bases. They can tell you about the kind of history of those brands. They can talk to you about which designs are knit up in the different yarns. They're just so knowledgeable. They've got so many books and they're so helpful. I just cannot speak more highly of the shop. And I think there's loads of these really brilliant shops all around the UK and globally. So that's going to be one of my like challenges for 2024, is to see how many of them I can visit and take you guys along with me. But in terms of what I picked up there, so some of you will remember, and I think in fact you can see it just over my shoulder right here, I picked up a load of the 3 balls of the Isager Highland wool in the colour Rhubarb. It's a gorgeous 2-ply, quite light fingering weight yarn. I've knit with this before, I love it. It's again blowing out a bit on camera, but it's kind of a gorgeous coral colour, corally rose colour. Really, like, rhubarb is perfect. Anyway, I bought 3 balls of this, but I'd really like to knit another Gallant sweater by Kadri in the mohair edition, and I just don't think 3 is going to be quite enough. We'll see, but I'm having this issue at the moment. I don't know if anyone else has this, but sleeves seem to be my nemesis. I never knit them long enough, and like when I think I've gone really long, that's when they fit perfectly, but there's only like a handful of my sweaters that the sleeves are the right length for me. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know if it's when I block them, the sleeves shrink up. I don't know. But anyway, that's why I wanted to buy an extra ball, because I just thought I don't want to run out. So that's one purchase, and that's kind of a standalone. And then the other thing, there's 2 other things that I purchased. I purchased this. This is a ball of Rowan Alpaca Classic. It's a 25-gram ball. This is shade 104, and it's 57% alpaca, 43% cotton. I've knit with this before in the past, like years ago, like when I first got kind of serious about knitting, so what, like 5-6 years ago? Well, I've been knitting for longer than that, but that was when I started watching podcasts and stuff. And it's just stunning. The shade is just, it's not quite picking up on camera, but it's got like a slightly lighter blue core, and then the alpaca is like blown through it. It's stunning. So I wanted to use that as a contrast to this in the Costner scarf. It's gonna be so good. I'm so excited. So I picked up a single ball of that, which should be more than enough for the contrast. And then with a test knit in mind, and I don't think there's any issue with me saying this because it's all been put very publicly on Instagram, but is it Chococo knitwear? Gosh, names today. Come on, Lauren. Let's have a... Yeah, Chococo knitwear has published this Harris hood. Now, I think the designer is letting people know today whether or not they've been successful in their application to test knit. And I haven't got a message so far. That doesn't mean I haven't, but you know, I'm not holding out. But when that hood is published, I would like to knit it, because I am making it, well, A, because it's gorgeous, but B, it's got a very practical reason for wanting to knit this. My other half and I are heading to Prague in the new year, very early on in the new year, and it's going to be really cold. And I think that hood will just be perfect for snuggling up and going on walks, because we'll probably walk around the city quite a bit. So I've picked up 2 skeins of Isager EcoSoft, which I've never knit with before. Similar concept to the Rowan Alpaca Classic. It's got like a core that then the alpaca is blown through. So actually very similar percentages actually. 1% off the Rowan Classic. So this is 56% alpaca, 44% cotton. 50 grams equals 125 meters. So it's a bit thicker than the Rowan Alpaca Classic. And this is colour E2S. This is gorgeous, like grey natural colour. So that was my acquisitions from the Oxford Yarn Shop and the Wool Hound, and I really enjoyed that day. We also went, as you would have seen in the vlog, to a vintage, like a vintage, show's the wrong word, like a kind of clothes thrift thing, and I picked up some items I'm so excited about. So to give you a little teaser again for that other YouTube channel that I'll be setting up in the new year, I picked up some pure silk kimonos, and I'm going to use the gorgeous silk to make home furnishings, which seems a shame to take the kimono apart, but I also think I just would feel very strange wearing a proper authentic kimono in day-to-day life. That doesn't feel right for me. And second of all, the owners have obviously got rid of this and no longer want it, but the fabric is such a beautiful quality, and to try and buy that fabric in a different form would cost loads, whereas this was a really economical way to pick it up. The design's beautiful, and I think there's something really lovely about reinventing something into a new form. So picked up a couple of kimonos to do that, which is really exciting. I picked up a gorgeous winter coat, not that I needed another one, but this was just too much of a steal to pass up, and fits me like it was made for me. So you might see that in a couple of vlogs coming up. But yeah, just generally had a really lovely weekend, which is really nice. So final bit of ramble really from me. Gosh knows how long I've been speaking for, but in terms of the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be recording a video talking about my favourite yarns in 2023, which will come up in 2 weeks' time whilst I'm away on a honeymoon. So you won't be deprived of content, but it won't be the normal podcast setup. So, but I thought that was a video I wanted to create anyway. I thought that might be quite nice timing. I have got a very love-hate relationship with showing acquisitions on the podcast. I do know some people really don't like it. On the other hand, I also know that we're all having to consider very carefully how we invest whatever budget we have for knitting. You know, buying yarn is an investment, and then the time invested in knitting it up. And I don't know about all of you, but I think hearing from other people, A, what's out there so that you know you're making a choice based on, you know, full knowledge of the market, but B, seeing other people knit stuff in various yarns kind of gives you so much information about whether or not that's a yarn you would want to invest in yourself. And I think really helps you make informed decisions. So I hope it's helpful, and I hope me being more transparent about the price of yarns, at least the price that they are at in the UK, or wherever I'm sourcing them, is helpful as well, because, you know, and maybe, let me know down in the comments if this be helpful, but maybe I can start, you know, regularly giving prices for how much a project cost me. I don't know if people would find that off-putting or really helpful. Let me know down below, but I'm very happy to be very open about those things with all of you if that would help you in your yarny decisions. So yeah, anyway, I think with Christmas coming up, if people, or maybe even birthdays or a New Year present, whatever, you know, however you celebrate, I think having my favourite yarns from 2023 might be helpful to give you inspiration if you're wanting to give any suggestions for gifts to other people, or if you're gifting yarn to knitty friends. So that will be coming up very, very soon. Thank you all for your well wishes for my wedding, which is now 1 week away. You may not hear so much from me over on Instagram over the next 3 weeks. I will try and post some content, but you won't be hearing as much from me. And obviously I'll be away on honeymoon, so if you've got any questions and I'm a bit slow to respond, my apologies in advance. But I will be coming back not only to the podcast, your first podcast episode will be around the 10th of December, the Sunday closest to that, I think it's the 10th. So first podcast episode will come out then, and I will be doing Vlogmas from the 8th of December. So I haven't quite figured out in my head the logistics of when I will post the Vlogmas videos and how many days I'll do together. Will I do one per day, but then will I be missing out big chunks because I'll be having to edit in the evenings? I haven't figured that out, but there'll be regular, at least 3 or 4 videos a week in lead up to Christmas. So I'm very excited. And on that, I have a very final note, which is that I have been, I guess you could kind of say chatting, liaising with, just interacting with Anne from My North Knit Corner, who's also got a podcast here on YouTube. If you don't already subscribe, please go over it and click that subscribe button and give Anne some support. She produces the most amazing podcast with really, really good technical details on all of her projects, including weight of project, levels of detail that I could only aspire to. She creates these amazing podcasts. But Anne and I kind of connected very early on in me creating this podcast. She's been like an ongoing supporter of me, and hopefully she feels vice versa. And a couple of months ago we decided to do an advent swap. So I have sent a parcel over to Norway and Anne has sent one over to me. So you will also see me opening my shared swapped advent with Anne over the course of Vlogmas. I will be a number of days behind, so I'll probably open those all in one video to kick things off, because I'll have been away and I won't be taking my advent with me. But a huge thank you to Anne for all the effort and thought that's gone into creating that advent calendar for me, and I really, really hope that she loves hers. But I will be keeping you guys abreast of what is in my lovely advent as we go along. I've been talking for plenty of time, so I'm sorry if this episode's felt a bit rambly. Hopefully it's been a really varied, interesting episode, but we'd love to connect with you more in the comments below. Thank you as always for spending some time with me, and I wish you a really lovely next week. Stay safe, keep knitting, and I'll speak to you very soon. Bye.